So good to introduce my friend Phil Dunn, who is an award-winning film director and screenwriter and poet. And it's a real pleasure and a privilege to bring Phil onto the stage today as we find out more about what he's been doing. Hey, Phil, good to see you.
Hello. Hi, Matt. How's it going?
Hello there. Yeah, really, really well. Nice to see you. Thanks so much, Phil. Thanks for finding some time in your day. I know that we've got not very long with you, but I wanted to capture just a little bit of time with you because you've been on a really interesting journey with your filmmaking. I know you're about to release another film. You've released some films,
Yeah.
But I just thought that there's something. There'll be other people I know who are stirred by this area of filmmaking and maybe just feel like this is a journey, a path maybe they feel inspired by. And I just thought maybe we could spend a bit of time, pick your brains, hear about some of your experiences, some of the challenges that you've been through. Maybe we could learn on, some of the from your own journey.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Sure.
Where are you based, Phil? Right now?
Well, I'm my business is based in Brixton in London, but I've recently moved out to Farnham in Surrey. So, yeah, that's where we're living now.
So, well, look, we're gonna just dive straight in, Phil, because it's really good to just think right back. I knew you when we were students
Yes.
in London, and there's quite just thinking about those early days, that transition from. You're a student in the sciences, then you worked in a church, but then, thinking about playing with film. Could you sort of paint that picture? What was that trajectory like? How did you know that film was something you wanted to get into?
Yeah. It's definitely sort of crept in, and it wasn't, but it was always sort of in the wings in my life. And then, I think when I first got to know you, that was when I was actually studying medicine at Imperial College, and you were at Imperial College studying zoology, was it? Is that right? Yeah, bugs. You were the bug man, and I was doing medicine, for goodness sake. So I was like, you were looking at bugs, and I was cutting up old, good cadavers. So yeah, it was quite a different setup than what we got now. I basically I didn't realize, but yeah, I grew up, we had a handy cam in the house, and I messed around with that, and then me and my cousins would meet up in the summers, and I would always go and stay with my cousin Andrew and his brother William and Elizabeth, and we would make little films together, and we were just like, we'd watch lots of James Bond, and we were like, sweet, let's be James Bond. And so I insisted that I had to be, or that they decided that I would be the James Bond character, and it basically involved me, killing my younger cousin Will in various different ways on camera, and between me and our cousin Andrew, we would direct it, and we just loved that. Those are great sort of summer times growing up, and I didn't really think at that time at all that it would be something I would do, because it's one of those careers that people look at and go, oh, I could never do that. I mean, that's Hollywood, and they all do that kind of thing. And I think that still persists to this day for me myself. It's still like something you're constantly kind of going, well, why couldn't I do that? Why couldn't I go into that? Anyway, I ended up, my father was a doctor, so I ended up choosing medicine. I thought it was such a noble profession. It was about people, and that was the sort of common thread there. Was about people and their stories, and how do you help them, and how do you get involved. Someone comes to you with a problem as a doctor, and you look at it and you take it all in, you listen to them, and then you try and figure out how you can help them. And so I went into that, but in the meantime, sort of became a pastor at the local church, HTB in London, and started making little videos there with their video department, again just because it was something I was fascinated by and enjoyed. That it just kind of grew. I did more and more, we did events, and I would show like videos that I'd made at the events, and they were quite, would have 200 students and play these sort of thought-provoking little videos of quotes and music and visuals. And the more I did it, the more I was like, I just really got a kick out of it. I really liked it, and really loved how it connected with people. And I guess in contrast with my experience of medicine, which was that I was finding it was heading towards less and less sort of the kind of contact with people that I wanted. and the connection with people and their stories. And it was much more about just problem solving with science. And that wasn't, although I could do that, it wasn't really where I was at. So it's a really convoluted answer, but essentially, then I actually didn't pass my second year of medicine, went up to study theology in Durham instead, after a short stint of being a student pastor at HTB in London. And it was there that I really then started connecting much more with story and the power of story, obviously in theology, and you know, these stories that have that have been told for thousands of years, that still hold sway over so much of culture and society, and then looking at Jesus and everything he did, and the incredible symbolism in the Gospels, and how those guys, you know, the Gospel writers, use that to tell powerful stories. And the more I'd studied that, the more I was like, I just loved it. And it seemed to connect with this sort of side, you know, pastime that I had of filmmaking, and they started to join up more. And so that's kind of where it kind of was birthed. Is that I think that answers your question just about.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fabulous, and it just really helps paint a bit of a picture that we all come from a context, and this often isn't just an overnight thing. This is a you know, responding to an inner nudge and circumstance and things that we, you know, and it takes some experimentation really. And I, you know, I knew you in those days where I saw you experimenting with stuff and trying this stuff, and you were responding to a passion that you had. And it's just been amazing to see how it's grown over the years. It just reminds me, as you're talking about theology and reflecting on how Jesus shared parables. TD Jakes, the pastor in the States, he talks about how, you know, the storytellers and the filmmakers are the preachers and communicators of today, just because, you know, and he refers back to the way, you know, how did Jesus communicate, you know, in many ways through parables and stories, and pointing to the contemporary illustrations of the day. Any further reflections on that? It's obviously something that's really energized you, inspired you.
Totally. I think, I mean, I'm so inspired by that. Like, that is kind of, you know, the more you read the Gospels, the more you sort of really meditate and contemplate on what Jesus was doing and the kind of stories that he told, but also the kind of reality that he seemed to think he was living in, which was a symbolic reality. He would take some bread and say, oh, it's just bread, is it? No, it's not. There's something, this means something more. That has a depth to it. And it is like you can take any one thing, and suddenly there's so many more layers than just the surface. And I think theologically that speaks to this idea of the cosmic Christ, like the immanent God, who's, you know, it's not pantheism, you know, God in everything, but panentheism, God expressing himself through all things, that you can connect to God through any one of these things. And I think that's where filmmaking and storytelling really connects with that, because they are symbolic worlds. And I'm always thinking about this, you know, I get obsessed with my films. You know, just at the moment we're thinking about, you know, on this latest short, we've been doing the coloring, which is the stage where you sort of work on the colors of the film, and a lot of people don't really think about that, but those colors speak to people whether you like it or not. So you either use them and work with them, or they're going to be sending signals to your viewers that you might not want to be coming across. So, you know, if you have a screen that is largely sort of greeny yellow, it gives a kind of slight sort of sickly feeling to something. And you can obviously, you can probably think of films where they've done that to put you on edge, or to make you feel a bit or a bit like, you know, strange about the scene. It's something that we inevitably, you know, if someone, and then the symbolism of someone picking up a cup and drinking, that says something to the viewer. It's like, it's, yes, on a surface level, oh, they're thirsty, but then it's also symbolic. It's like, why have they shown that shot of this person really needing a drink? Is it because it's, you know, what kind of drink is it? If it's water, is it saying that they're thirsty? But is that saying something more about them? Like they're looking for something to satisfy their thirst. Yeah, and that is there. That's, you know, you juxtapose that with, you know, them sort of struggling to connect with people, and then you show how they're so thirsty for water, those two images start to sort of play together and say something to you. And I think Jesus was doing that all the time. And if you read John's gospel, John, or whoever exactly wrote it, like he uses that, like light and dark. He's using these, you know, throughout. We can pick all sorts of contrasts that he uses, and they speak to you if you let them. And I think for me, I feel like that's God calling us to like wake up and see the world around us and let him speak to us through every single thing that's around us. And then the world around you becomes alive. It becomes, everything around you feels like God can be speaking to you through it. So if you look at the floorboards on the floor that you're standing on, they have a history. They were a tree. They grew from out of the ground. They have a story that can speak to you. God can speak to you through that. He was innately involved in the growth of that tree that's now ended up under your feet on the floor, that feels warm in the sunshine. You know, I love that. And that's why poetry and filmmaking just makes so much sense to me now. It's like it's engaging with that symbolic, God imbued universe, and sort of conversing with it and being part of that, you know, expression that he's doing all the time.
It's fabulous to hear that. And now, just thinking, you know, about the journey that you've been on with this. You know, we'll talk about some of the larger projects in a moment. But there's a time when, you know, when you were going from experimenting with this stuff and it began to become, you know, your paid employment, and you were, I know you were doing some contract work and corporate work. And how did you keep the vision alive in the time when, you know, in the time when you had a vision of something bigger and yet you weren't quite there? How did you keep going and keep yourself inspired?
Yeah, it's still the same challenge, but I think for me, with the kind of that work, I got into it. I was very grateful that like people would, you know, I bought this camera when I was a student on a credit card, very unwise. And yet it proved to be a really good decision in some ways, but, you know, I had to pay it off for a couple of years. You know, it took a while to get that off my credit card. But then I had it and I could make stuff for people. And then people would like actually say, we want to pay you to come and make something for our company. And I'd be like, okay, great. And I'm having quite a lot of fun doing this. And so, but then as the years go on, you kind of go, well, I've done, you know, 50 corporate videos now. And they start to feel all a bit samey. When I first started, I did weddings a little bit. And I quite quickly tired of those, because it was like, there's a sort of formula for doing weddings. And after a bit, you know, I'm sure some people would do a much more creative job of them, but after a bit, you sort of think, I've kind of done these now, and I don't want to wreck the whole vibe of weddings for me for the future, so I'm going to move on. You know, like, you want to be able to attend a wedding and not be like, yeah, you want to be able to connect with it. So yeah, it was, once it kind of became more run of the mill, I kept trying to see it as just, well, it was always a struggle, and I'd often have days where I'm like, hang on, why am I making these videos? Why am I filming, you know, some sort of dry sort of corporate thing that's not flicking my switches or turning on my buttons? And I think I tried to keep coming back to like it was a great way of building up skills. It was a great way of like observing people and again just trying to be present in the room and connect with what was going on with the people in the room. But yeah, learning it each time, just honing the thing of like what the light is doing in the room, and how do we use that, what, you know, the person's trying to say, and how do we help them to get that across in the clearest way possible. So honing skills. But yeah, it got to a point of like 3-4 years ago where it was like, I think I've kind of done that now. I can't really do it anymore with integrity, like do some of these corporate jobs and feel like I just felt like a bit like I just don't really want to be here anymore, because I feel like I've learned all that I can from these situations, and it was time to take the skills that I'd learned and start applying them to something that I felt really passionate about. So I initially was really passionate about the skills, but then it was like, okay, now that I've got them, what do I use them for? And that was quite a sort of challenge point for me in my times, you know, personally with God, like a sense of like, I want to tell stories, and it's not the story of that bank, and it's not the story of, you know, them or them or them. It's actually some of what God has been speaking to me about. So that's taken quite a lot of prayer and therapy and friendship support, and just facing down personal demons and difficult things and healing to actually get through to a place where I feel okay about doing that, which is, you know, it's funny, isn't it? But yeah, it's one of the hardest things to really go to that point that God has genuinely called you to go there, rather than just settle for, but hang on, I could keep making corporate videos and make a really good living out of that, and that everyone would respect that. But it wasn't where my heart really was. So you see that I had to come back to my heart and follow it. Yeah.
Just thinking about these larger projects, Phil, that you've, award-winning projects. Think about The Juggler, The Hero, the box office smash, About, also Stupid Boy that is going to be released. And you know, just before we get into some of the details, maybe one or two, where did these come from? Were these something that you'd you were down the pub with some friends and you sort of sketched it on the back of an envelope, or is this something that's sort of been brewing for these stories, these narratives? They've been brewing for a while.
Yeah, no, they're definitely, there's a little bit of that. Like I would say my film About was a bit more like chatting with my friend Tom, who was editing at the time and is now one of the composer for my films, and he's brilliant. And we were like, what can we do for the next film? And so we talked about people in the back of a taxi and some of that awkwardness of not knowing someone, and then so that came out of that. But then that's one type of project. But for me, the ones that I think I feel really passionate about, like Box Office Smash and the latest Stupid Boy, have been that kind of the idea that will not go away. And Box Office Smash, came from just playing with those words. It sounds like a big blockbuster film, and it's not. It's it's very sort of unusual, slightly abstract, absurd kind of film. But again, very symbolic, and it's a man who works inside a cardboard box, and in that cardboard box is in the middle of a park, and he doesn't realize he can get out of it, and for me that was very symbolic at the time of me in that cardboard box of making corporate videos for people and thinking, hang on, surely I can get out of this, surely there's a world beyond this, and needing something to sort of in that story, sometimes you need things to go horribly wrong for you to realize it's time to get out. And the computer messes up, and he ends up having a bit of a moment and breaks out of his box office, hence Box Office Smash. But that was just something that got in my head like 5 years before, and it was like, don't be silly, come on, just and me just playing with the words and think about it. But it just there's something about it for me that held a meaning and held some message for me, if you like, that I kept coming back to. And I felt, actually really do feel like that was God sort of saying, I want to speak to you through this. And what I found as I made it, it was a very emotional process. And it's the same with The Stupid Boy, which has very much been, again, like a 10-year thing. It's been in my head, which is, well, we can get into that in a minute, but it again just would not go away. And the process of making it then has become, for me, a very contemplative, meditative thing of like really having incredible opportunity. I mean, so many people would love to be able to spend time making film. I'm lucky enough that I can, but to really immerse into the story, to really connect with what is going on in it at every level, to do that sort of, for me, they are becoming more and more these films like, prayer, like contemplation, like connection, like a place in which, an arena in which to listen to God, to connect to him, to let him speak to you through these things, and to have people around you acting out stuff and you to be in the middle of it, seeing it, and then letting that hit you and speak to you that's an incredible thing. So that's where they've come from, is those kind of films, and those are the ones I want to go after most. Those ones where it's just like, oh, I literally going to bed at night and I can't get that out of my head, and there's another bit, oh yeah, and it just won't leave me alone. And I just now have learned to go, I think that may be God, and if it keeps coming back, I'll just make a bit more space for it, and then when I make more space for it, it fills out that space, and then I make a bit more space for it, and it starts to fill out that space too, and you kind of go, okay, there's really something in this, so let's go with it.
I really like that description of making space. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah.
And Phil, the last sort of few minutes or so, it'd be great to hear about Stupid Boy. Tell us a bit about the background, as much as you can tell us, and what we can expect.
Yes, well, this is, I mean, we're just finishing up the edit for it. I'm just beginning to think about how do we start to publicize this and put it out there on the festival circuit. It's a 15-minute short film. It's about a boy who has some sort of condition, which means that he is very affectionate and loving, but he's growing up in a London where there are, I mean, it's quite full on. So there are suicide bombings happening in London, in his London that he's growing up in, and actually they're being perpetrated by white supremacists. And we thought I just wanted to sort of flip the trope of like suicide bombers and look at like so that we can get past the sort of religion versus religion ideas or whatever, to get past why do actual individuals end up doing this kind of thing. And anyway, he sees this one day. He's in a market and in Brixton, actually, the Brixton village, and a man stands up with a suicide bomb, and everyone a suicide vest, and everyone runs away and turns to run away, except the boy, who starts to walk towards him. And I'll leave it there. That's the premise, basically. So
wow.
It's really sort of taking some quite hefty subjects right on the head, and but also trying to say something very simple about them. And it's really about the simple power of love in the face of all this extremism, or like, you know, rage in the face of brokenness. So yeah, it's
wow.
going to be exciting to put it out and see what people think, because it's really pushing the boat out on it.
When can we expect to see it or view it?
Well, we are hoping to have it done by the end of this month, and then it's still then got the kind of process of we've got to package it for putting it to festivals, and then we will do some screenings. So I'll let you know that they should be in the next like 2-3 months. We'll try and do some screenings so that we can get friends and family along, and anyone we can get an invite to, really. There'll be a screening. Brixton Village wants to screen it there because we filmed it there, and so we're going to do an event with them, which will be a sort of ticketed thing, because it has to stay sort of private until the film is made public after festivals. And then it'll have its festival run, and then we'll release it, and we'll have to make a distribution deal or whatever to see what channel or where we can get it out. And short films is always difficult, but we're going to see if we can get it to some of the bigger festivals this time. So the previous festivals we've done are kind of been sort of small to medium size, and we're trying to go for the bigger ones, maybe sort of, you know, even kind of Rain Dance and Sundance, or South by Southwest, or, you know, even push towards, I don't know, BAFTAs or whatever, if we can try and get it that way. You've always got to aim high. At the same time, I'm not kidding myself, you know, but you don't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So we'll throw it at some of these things and see how people react. But been really encouraged by the last few films and some of the awards they've won. So we'll see what happens with this one. But so stay tuned, basically, and we'll get you some dates soon.
Oh, Phil, it really is so inspirational just to hear how you're, as you said, you've been making space, and you've just been responding as God's filled out that space. And I just, you know, I just feel like, you know, cheering you on. You are doing absolutely fabulous work. Can't wait to see Stupid Boy come out. And a couple of questions come in. Where can we see or stream some of your films, please? Says Ashley.
Okay, hi Ashley. You can watch Box Office Smash on Amazon Prime. So if you type Box Office Smash, it should come up. You can watch my last film, About. It's called About, and you watch that by going to aboutshortfilm.com, and you just sign up there. It puts you on a mailing list. So you sort of, what we're doing with that film is that we're actually trying to now pitch for that to become a Netflix series. So you can follow its progress once you've watched it to see what happens to it. So please do watch that. Otherwise, go to my website, phildunn.uk, and you can find out more about watching the others there.
Is that the best way to for people to connect with you as well on your website there, Phil? We've got Tim Hobbs. Phil, hi Tim. He's a fellow filmmaker. This is really helpful to hear about Phil's journey, as I can relate a lot to those points of change and challenge. would really appreciate a chat with Phil at some stage of change, but feel quite overwhelmed, he says. So
yes, yeah, I get it. I think I feel overwhelmed on a regular basis. That's probably quite a good place to be. Baptism, the meaning of it is to be fully immersed in something, and that's literally to overwhelm something. So yeah, by all means. Through my website, there's a contact page there, and then also obviously Instagram, Phil DC Dunn on Instagram, or Authentive, which is my company, so at Authentive on Insta, and then the films as well, the Stupid Boy film on Instagram. So yeah.
Phil, we're going to let you go, but thank you so much for giving us some time today and cheering you on, and can't wait for Stupid Boy to drop, and can't wait to see what it's all about. So yeah, God bless you, Phil. Thank you again.
Cheers, Matt. All right, take care. Lots of love.
See you soon.
Bye.